Hi. So in today's PowerPoint, we're going to talk about kids who worry. And we're going to look at them. We're going to look at understanding what worry is about and some tips for dealing with kids who worry. So our goals today, just like it says here, we're going to look at worry and actually what worry looks like. We're going to talk about prevalence, understanding, tips focusing on relationships, tips focusing on psychoeducational models. And basically, that really means social and mindful educational models and some action steps. So, first, we have here this little character of Charlie Brown. We all recognize Charlie Brown, right? And Charlie Brown often was an overthinker, and he would worry so much about the world, small things, medium things, big things, but often his worry did just what you see here. It immobilized him. Does worry immobilize our students? Well, some of them. And while this is funny and it brings a smile to our face, worry really can be very debilitating for our students in many different ways. There are some worries that are really so appropriate. We have to remember that developmentally, as kids are going through their developmental stages, it's normal to have common worries. As they're listed here, you may relate and remember from perhaps your own kids or kids you've worked with that these are stages that kids go through. Preschoolers, ages 2 to 4, a lot of it is loud noises like toilet flushing, the dark, shadows. Basically, they get startled easily. They're still figuring things out in the world, and they're not comforted. They don't know how to self-soothe in the dark. They haven't mastered that yet. 5 to 7, so we're talking at kindergarten, first, second grade. Look at that list. Bad guys, fire, the dark, doctors and getting shots, peer rejection, bugs and animals. Now, is a kid normal if they don't have these worries? Absolutely. These are just common worries that are out there. And remember, bad guys is also listed for the 8 to 11. What's happening? They're beginning to be exposed to TV shows and video games where there's bad guys, and really understanding the difference between what's real and not real. Fantasy and what's not fantasy is part of what they're working through in these developmental stages. So while they're figuring that out, it can feel a little scary to them. Doctors and shots, maybe you had one of your own kids be afraid of that. And then peer rejection. Remember, kids are negotiating and learning how to be problem solvers during this time, how to cooperate and share. And what happens when they can't, when they're on the playground and they're not able to do that? They'll think that life is over and they're not my friend anymore. So they're figuring all of this out developmentally. Ages 8 to 11, again, the bad guys: dying, sickness, school failure, peer rejection, throwing up. These are really common worries that kids have. And as they're, again, aging, they're figuring out that, they're exposed to and aware of things happening around them. So they're exposed to more sickness. They're exposed to people dying in the world. and they're trying to make meaning of all of that. Now, our middle and high schoolers are 12 to 18. This is where things get bigger, right? Worries, normal. Safety, sickness, failure in school and sports, school presentations. There's a lot more demands, right? There's a lot more demands for performance. How they appear to their peers. Peers become so important. That's all what adolescence is about, is the peers become more important than family. Violence, global issues, germs and health, romantic concerns, being an adult. These are all real worries, and they're developmentally appropriate. They wax and wane, but they're there. It's all part of what they're mastering during this developmental stage. Now, with worries, what does it look like? So we have up here the fight, flight, freeze response. For those of you that have taken my trainings, we've talked about the brain, and we've talked about the hand model, and the upper brain, it being the prefrontal cortex, the thinking brain, the wise leader. We've talked about the midbrain, where things get regulated, and we've talked about the lower brain, where your amygdala exists. And in the lower brain, the amygdala is that police officer of the brain, the police officer that says, I will protect you when there's a threat or a danger. Now, that amygdala, which is an autonomic reaction to life events, that amygdala often will cut off thinking to this prefrontal cortex, right? And there may be a misperception about the event. So you've all heard the expression, he makes mountains out of molehills. Well, that is what happens when there's a misperception of the event. So when you're going along, as you see here, and things are going along okay, this is that green zone, that place where everyone feels safe. They're socially engaged. Their rest is good. Their eating is good. Their basic needs are being met. They're feeling good. In that yellow zone, there's a danger perception where fight and flight move in. Mobilization to self-protect. And then in that red zone, that is a life threat, a freeze response. And it could look like an immobility, or just not able to move, feeling so threatened, so immobilized, kind of like being in a state of shock. So still having that look-like thing. So this is where I really want to get your attention. I want you to think about kids that you know that may do some of this. So when a kid is feeling unsafe, it's going to look like chaos in some way. So a fight response, it could look like a volcano erupting. Have you been exposed to students that have looked like a volcano erupting? Have you said, oh, that kid has an anger problem? You can ask, is it anger management or anxiety or worry management? The flight response, it may look like a windstorm, meaning it's a kid that's running. Oh, that one's a runner, you might say. I had a kid running down Schultes once, on the street, out of a classroom, down the road. Well, was that attention seeking? or anxiety or worry management. And then there's that freeze response. And it just looks like the kid is frozen in time, can't get through, very disengaged, like being in an island. Is it avoiding hard stuff? Or is it anxiety management? I had a kid that was refusing to go into a classroom, just frozen outside of the classroom, eyes wide. And this was a kid who was really popular, and all of a sudden this kind of stuff started happening. He was 11 years old. Shocked me. Was he frozen in time? Yes. Was it because they were having a test that day? Possibly. Was he avoiding it? Or was it anxiety? So when we look at worry, we want to think about how we're looking at it and what's next. Okay. And we're not diagnosticians. This is really, really important. We're not here in our schools to diagnose kids. We're here to help them. So we just want to have some understanding. And when we're looking at what's next, excessive worry can lead to anxiety when worry becomes a chronic state and happens without provocation, like there isn't a cause, there doesn't appear to be a cause or a trigger. And anxiety, that word, well, that encompasses all these things. It encompasses feelings of worry, nervousness, or dread, and is paired with physical symptoms like restlessness, fatigue, difficulty concentrating, irritability, muscle tension, inability to sleep through the night, and may include stomach ache, sweaty palms, shakiness, dizziness, increased bathroom use, headaches. So worry doesn't always lead to anxiety, but sometimes does. And worry doesn't always lead to those 3 F's, fight, flight, freeze, response, but sometimes does. Now let's look at prevalence. Remember, prevalence is the proportion of the population that has this at a given time. So according to the Center for Disease Control in March of 2020, in between the ages of 2 and 17, 9.4% of children, 6.1 million, have a diagnosis of ADHD. Between the ages of 3 and 17, 7.4%, or 4.5 million, have a diagnosis of behavior problems. The next one, ages 3 to 17, 7.1%, or 4.4 million kids have a diagnosis of anxiety, which includes the worry stuff. And ages, again, 3 to 17, 3.2%, or 1.9 million kids have a diagnosis of depression. Let's look at this chart. This is a chart, again, put out by the Center for Disease Control, looking at depression, anxiety, behavior disorders by age. What do you notice? Let's just look at worry. Here in this middle category is worry. So if we, let's hide this, if we look at here, we have ages 12 to 17. Look at how high that is. That's higher than behavior or depression. Look at 6 to 11. That's a lot. And then, of course, 3 to 5, this is a lower amount. I have some wonders in looking at this. I have some wonders about behavior and depression. Are some of the kids in our elementary schools who are having behavior issues also not being noted for having some worry-related behaviors? So when we look at prevalence, there are some conditions that go together. We look at 3 out of 4 kids with depression also have anxiety. 1 out of 3 kids with behavior problems also have anxiety. And 1 out of 3 kids with anxiety also have behavior problems. So regardless if it's a diagnosis or not, the question is, looking at the root of why kids are doing what they're doing, if they're not having the skill, they don't know how to solve the problems, it could also be related to not being able to access the thinking part of their brain. And why? Well, when we think about worry and we think about this, we have to look at genetics and understanding that some kids are born with more of an emotional sensitivity, that they're not able to regulate so well. It's kind of their wiring, and they need to learn those skills in order to develop the ability and strengthen that part of their brain so that they can manage and have better perspectives on things. There's also temperament, right? Different kids are born with different temperaments. Some of the kids who are born into the same situations one is able to withstand more stress and one isn't. So there's resilience, right? And there's also nurture and nature. Nurture meaning what you're born with, nature meaning what you're exposed to. We know that children exposed to trauma have an interruption in their basic needs and become emotionally altered as a result. So these are our kids who are more on guard, being more hypervigilant, being more aware of everything around them. They'll pick up on cues and misinterpret cues, and those are kids that will indeed make the mountains out of molehills oftentimes. And understanding if a kid isn't feeling safe, they're not going to be able to master all those normal worries and fears that they have throughout their stages of development, because they're going to be in a state of dissonance. They're not going to be getting cues from people around them to help normalize what's real and what's not real. They're not going to be able to get that nature piece put into perspective. So it can interfere with their perceptions of the world and how they see the world. So when we think about the brain development again and understanding, I mentioned this before, that the right side of the brain, the emotional side, develops first. And if there's a dissonance or if kids are getting stuck, the left brain or the logical side will be hindered. So how do we fix that? How do we help build up that coping side, that right side, so that their left brain can be reached and can be making better connections with the world, so that they have the ability to soothe their worries and move on. First, It's really all about relationships. And relationships, your relationship is the single most important variable in developing success for kids. So relationships really build up that stamina and resilience that kids need in order to move on through their developmental stages. And guess what? School creates a safe place for them. It's a predictable place. It's where they go every day and can expect the same people, the same events to be happening every day. There's a schedule, there's a time frame. It's what they need. Through these predictable connections, they're building up their safety net. Okay? You are part of their tribe that's helping them feel connected. Okay? And established, and roots are established into that ground, and they're becoming stronger and stronger, somewhat like a tree that's standing tall. Ritualizing connections is so key in relationship. The way you smile is a ritual. The way you say hello to kids, it's a ritual. Some teachers stand at their door and shake kids' hands when they walk in, or that was what they did before this pandemic. But just standing in a certain spot every day so that they know that you're there to be counted on, that's a ritual. With kids who worry, providing direction is really key. In your relationship, that's what you do. You provide direction. You are firm and you're nurturing. You have boundaries that you enforce and limits, but you do it in a nurturing way. When you're doing direction, you also aren't lecturing. You're not going on and on and on and on like Lucy in the Charlie Brown cartoon. You are using that rule of 5 words, 5 letters to a word. Hey, good morning. You know where your coat goes, right? So you're providing firm, nurturing direction without a lot of talking. You're also providing assurance. In your paralanguage, that means your words, your actions, they all match. Everything's connected. I'm going to keep you safe. You're going to assure them in the words that you are using every day by you showing up and paying attention. You're telling them every day, hey, I'm here. You can count on me. I'm here. I'm keeping you safe. With relationship, there's attachments. And with those attachments, yeah, it's different than the attachments they have with their biological family. It's a different kind of relationship. You're developing trust. You can be counted on. You mean what you say, and you say what you mean. That's part of that predictability, right? Predictable space, predictable connections, but also showing up, doing what you say you're going to do, and saying what you're going to do. Like you just do it, right? You can be counted on. And then PBIS, that positive behavior intervention support. Remembering that you need to have, we said 5, well now I'm stretching it to 6. 6 positive statements or affirmations to one redirection. All kids need a redirection, but you're going to really focus on the noticings. When you notice a kid, you're affirming their presence, and that's what you have to do. Whether it's with a nonverbal smile or thumbs up or nod or Hey, I see what you're doing today. Wow. Whatever it is, saying what you see, saying what you notice makes a difference. So this is a picture of me. Obviously, you can see that. Co-regulation is what we do throughout the day with kids. And these are two of my grandkids. And co-regulation is when we're warm and responsive to what's happening around us. So if I was not co-regulating with my older granddaughter there, I would be frowning and saying, hey, this isn't your time to be over here now. Be careful. Be careful. Right? But no, I'm being warm and responsive and encouraging with her. And that's how we have to be with our kids. Yeah, they're a lot bigger, but it's the same message. We have to co-regulate. We have to be warm and responsive with how we're interacting with them. So now let's move into tips. And with our kids who have what looks like fight, flight, freeze responses, we can basically be teaching about helping them name their emotions. And if worry is one of them, you want to teach about how to manage that. And when you do that, you're going to lead to helping them regulate the worry. So if it's an anger situation, figuring out what it is that's making them snap and helping them see that it's normal to have feelings and normalize that worry, again, is thoughts plus feelings equals an action. Really, it's important to also enforce and reinforce the sense that all worry is, a little worry is good. It can be really mobilizing. A little worry helps us study for a test, right? If we weren't worried, we'd say, oh, I'll pass that, and then take the test and not do well at all. A little worry is good. It's motivating to get a job done. You know, it can be, it can help with enhanced performance in sports, in school, even socially in planning an event or going to an event, getting there on time. Now, when you're first teaching about worry, then you have to get into, well, okay, the first thing we have to do when you get this feeling is to relax. Everybody has to relax. We have to gain access to that prefrontal cortex, and we're not going to do that unless we calm down and let that amygdala get in check, right? So we want to do some deep breathing. Now, we've taught our kids from early on that breathing is good. With worry, you can add in, especially for the older kids, the middle schoolers, the high schoolers. Remember that prevalence rate? Remember that chart? So let's look at this. You want to breathe in friendship. Breathe out loneliness. Breathe in happiness. Breathe out sadness. Breathe in bravery. Breathe out fear. Breathe in calm. Breathe out stress. By teaching them words, you're also getting those words sunk into their heads, those positive affirmations. With relax, you can also use the Close your eyes and visualize. Think of yourself doing something you're passionate about. See yourself doing that thing. Is it you throwing a ball? Is it you running? Is it you cooking? Is it you playing outside? Close your eyes. Visualize people that you care about. Visualize people that care about you. You know, with kids, you can also do this. I would have kids draw a heart. And inside the heart, I would have them draw or write names of people who loved and cared about them. You can just have kids tell you that as well, especially depending on your setting. If you're a bus para on the bus, you could just have them talk you through that. Like, who cares about you? Tell me who cares about you. Who do you love? Who loves you? Relaxing is also teaching kids about self-talk and using I am affirmations such as I am safe, I am okay, I am capable, I am strong, I am brave, I am kind, I am loving. You can do that on your hand and pick 5. I am safe, I'm okay, I'm capable, I'm kind, I'm loving. And then you can remind the kid to just look at their hand during the day and remember those 5 things and see if they can name them off throughout the day. Relaxing is also helping kids learn how to take a break. And, you know, obviously there's things that they can do at home, like listen to music on headphones or do some sensory seeking or sensory avoid activities. Like if it's too much for them, they can learn, go to the bathroom. Highly capable kids, I used to teach, when they would get stressed about something or worried about something, going to the bathroom is a really normal place to take a break. It's okay to go there. You can't hang out there for 2 hours, but you can go there for 5 minutes, 7 minutes. It's okay. And then depending on your setting, having a calm zone or a calm box, like a take a break situation that they can go to, even having a small fidget in their pocket that they can rub, like a stone or a bead, depending on their age and what the significance is of the object. Sometimes relaxing with a transitional object for some of our kids helps, like having a picture of someone who, if they're having a hard time leaving their home, they're too worried about leaving and worried about, they're obsessing about someone getting sick or not being okay when they're not at home with them, having a picture of that person that they can carry with them and look at, or having something of that person's, an object that they have to return to them at the end of the day. Again, depends upon your relationship with the student, but sometimes as a team you can come up with these ideas together. The next part, first you relax, then you have to rethink. And that's helping kids have a new perspective or a different lens by using language to inspire hope through growth mindset statements like, you are a learner. You can't do it yet, but you'll get there. So helping kids rethink is sometimes that growth mindset. And it's not just for kids, by the way. This is for adults too. And I'm referencing now Angela Duckworth's Grit, The Power of Passion and Perseverance. It's a great book, by the way. This is for adults. And one of the things that she talks about with growth mindset, you can undermine growth mindset and grit by statements like, "You're a natural." I love that. Where you're thinking that's kind of confining a kid to who they are. Promoting growth mindset is, "You're a learner." I love that. You can still say, "I love that." But saying you're a natural means that the kid is thinking that the only thing he's good at are things that come natural to him. Undermine growth mindset statements are, "Well, at least you tried," versus, "That didn't work. Let's talk about how you approached it and what might work better." Undermining growth mindset can be statements like, "Great job, you're so talented," instead of, "Great job. What's one thing that could have been even better?" Like believing in the fact that they can continue to grow. And that brings us to the next statement here, rethinking, using language to highlight passion and perseverance builds grit. Just like I was just quoting. And, Pete Carroll, if you're from Seattle, or this area in Washington, you know who Pete Carroll is, coach of our Seahawks. Pete Carroll says, "Do things better than they've ever been done before." So by you using "I notice" statements, you're going to partner with kids to set goals so that they're going to be able to overcome what was and move on to something better. And this acronym, I love this acronym. This is really great for your, like 10 to 18-year-olds that we work with, having an acronym of GLAD. So for kids who worry, this really helps them to see the glass half full versus the glass half empty. And this is where we look at G, something I'm grateful for; L, something I learned; A, something I appreciate; and D, something that I delight in. So if they do this every day, if you get kids to just think about this every day, and yourself too, it really helps to combat those worries. And rethinking is also that whole changing my thinking business. You're teaching kids to look at evidence of their thinking. What made them think that? And then write a new story about it. So it's kind of like writing a social story with a kid where they're the actor, they're the main character, they're the star of the show. And you're teaching them that, let's think about that kid who is doing the fight response and is, yelling and saying, I'm not able to do this. I'm not doing this. You can't make me." So when they're in a relaxed state, look at what it is what was the evidence there that they couldn't do. And maybe it was the writing part. Maybe it was the putting down the equation on the paper. So then they can write a news story. So when I begin to feel panicked, I can, and then have a calming activity that they can do. Maybe it's a visualize. I can see myself on the board writing the answer. And I can take a breath and I can try to just do 2 parts of this 3-part problem. So helping the kids set goals and rewrite their story. Part of this rewriting their story is getting them also to see where they're at with the size of their worry. So in order to rethink, they're going to have to also look at the size of their problem, whether it's a small, medium, or a big worry. And then on the 5-point scale, how they're reacting to that. So when they're looking at this, are they over the edge? Are they over the edge for a small worry? We want to get them to match it so that they are a little uneasy with a small worry, and then be able to rethink how they can handle that. So we relax, we rethink, and then we restart. So restarting is the hard part because they have to really see themselves differently. So seeing themselves differently may be by naming themselves as a worry detective or as a problem solver. So when we think about this with the restarting, they will define the worry event and what their new thinking is. So it's kind of recapturing their rethinking about it, and do that script. So when the event happens, I can. And really practicing that before they go out and do it. The restarting is that focusing part. So they really have to be relaxed. They really have to be doing their breathing so they can access that prefrontal cortex, the executive functioning, and have those new thoughts with their new narratives of self-talk in their head of I am capable, I'm not alone, I'm a problem solver, I can do one thing at a time, I can tame my worries, I'm a worry detective. And with restarting, they're going to have to restart progressively, right? You want to really be focusing on restarting, not going in with thinking they're going to be the best, for example, mathematician in the class, but rather restarting small, taking small steps first. Maybe if they've been afraid to go to school and they haven't been getting to school, maybe they want to go to school and shoot hoops first, or have a healthy snack before they walk into the classroom. You have to think about what the kids' preferences are. Use them to get some gas in their tank. So you want to fill up that tank a little at a time so that they can keep going. You're not going to have them go 100 miles an hour and use all that gas up at once. They're going to go a little at a time, and you're going to teach that. You're going to set goals with them. You're going to get this done, then this done, then this done. So smaller steps in succession. So finally, I just want to say that worries are real. For kids that might be, running around the playground, we had one locking himself in a porta potty, shaking that porta potty, or the kid that's hiding under the desk, or the kid that's screaming at the teacher. Think about, well, gee, I wonder if they're not feeling safe, and I wonder what they're worried about. We want to think about our current pandemic and how when kids do come back to school, there will probably be an increase in worry-like behavior. In the New York Times on May 19th, there was an article in the science section of the Times about emotions with kids and how they're going to manifest in schools. This was a quote I thought was worthy of your attention. For some people who have not learned the skills to cope, this pandemic makes them feel more vulnerable and out of control. Dr. Makita Jones. So we need to be aware, and we need to have some understanding about what worry is. Relationships that you have with students build resilience. Resilience is that ability to cope with the stressors in the environment and the stressors in their days, in their lives. By practicing affirmations, you're going to be that external reinforcer, the person having empathy, and that person being that predictable, safe place for our kids. You're going to notice them, and you're going to help them rewrite their scripts by noticing their kindness, their bravery, that they're okay, that they're able to go on. And the biggest action step in practical understanding here is to believe in the power of you. For elementary professionals, these are just a couple of books that are really just practical, hands-on, easy things to look at with kids. I love When My Worries Get Too Big. It's a great visual and really simple to read and can be used across grade levels. You may have seen this around Don't Sweat the Small Stuff. Simple ways to keep little things from taking over your life. It's, again, not a big psychological read. It's just very practical tips. Middle, high. And then the biggest resource is the mirror, is you. So look at that, my friends, because you have the power just by being who you are to help our kids. Thank you.